So this lesson is called Evaluating Algebraic Expressions and Formulas. So these are some important steps that you need to remember. So first, you want to write down the question or the expression. Next, you're going to substitute the given values, so the numbers for the variables, letters, using brackets for organization. And third, you're going to solve the expression using the rules for BEDMAS that we went over earlier. Okay, so this first example, it says evaluate each expression if x equals -4 and y equals -1. Okay, so for this first one, it says 3x plus 2y equals. So what we're going to do is we are going to substitute x equals -4 into this x, and then y is -1 into this y. Okay, so I'm just going to write my equal sign. So I'm going to have a 3, but instead of x, now I'm going to substitute in -4. So up here, instead of 3 times x, it's 3 times -4. Then our positive stays the same, and our 2 stays the same. But instead of multiplying 2 by y, we're going to multiply it by -1. Okay. So now BEDMAS happens. So we have to do, there's nothing inside the brackets, there's no exponent, so now it's multiplication. So left to right, we have 3 times -4. So positive times a negative is a negative. 3 times 4 is 12. And then on the other side, we have plus. And then it's 2 times -1, so a positive times a negative is a negative. So we have negative, and 2 times 1 is 2. Okay, and then remember when you have the back-to-back signs, a positive and a negative, it turns into a negative. So it's -12 minus 2, and -12 minus 2 gives you -14. Okay, B. We have 3 minus 3xy, but instead of x, we'll substitute -4, and instead of y, we'll substitute -1. So over here we have 7 minus 3, but now instead of 3, it's multiplied by -4. Or sorry, x, it's -4. And then instead of y, it's -1. Okay, now we're going to do some multiplication. So our first multiplication is this right here. So I still have 7 minus, and then it's 3 times -4. So 3 times -4 gives us -12. And then we still have -1. Okay, so now we have 7 minus, and then we have -12 times -1. So negative times a negative is a positive. Oops. And 12 times 1 is 12. But now we have 2 signs back to back, a positive and a negative, so we can replace that with a negative. So this actually means 7 minus 12. And 7 minus 12 gives us -5. Okay, turn the page. And remember, pause whenever you need. Okay, so this is just more examples. So I just copied this from the last page so we could remember what 4 is and what y was. Okay, so it's 2. Instead of x, I'm going to put in my -4. So -4. And that is squared. Subtract, and then instead of writing y, I have -1. So -1, and we still have to square it. So next step, nothing we can do in the brackets, but we do have some exponents. So we can do our exponents next. So we have 2 stays out front. -4 times -4 gives us positive 16. And then subtract, and then -1 squared, -1 times -1 is +1. Okay, so next thing we have to do is multiplication. So 2 times 16 gives us 32. And then we still have subtract 1. And then 32 take away 1 gives us 31 as our final answer. Okay, next question. We have 2 times x, but instead of x, I'm going to sub in -4. So 2 times -4, and then minus, instead of this x right here, we're putting in -4, and instead of that y, I'm putting in a -1, and it's all multiplied together because they're all side by side, so -4, -1, minus, and then inside the bracket, it's x, but instead of x, I'm putting in -4, and then it says plus, and then y is -1, and it is cubed. Okay, so now we have to do brackets for BEDMAS. We got to do this part first. So I'm going to rewrite everything so it stays the exact same. So 2 times -4 minus -4 times -1 minus. And now we're going to work on this step. So -4 plus -1. So when you have two signs back to back, a positive and a negative, the negative wins. So this really means -4 minus 1. And that's going to give us -5. And that's cubed. Okay. Then we have to do some, what's it called here? Exponents. Okay. So I'm going to leave everything the exact same. And we have 2 times -4 minus 4 times -1 minus, and then over here, because it's cubed, right here, because it's cubed, this actually means -5 times -5 times -5. So negative and a negative make a positive, and then positive times another negative is a negative. And then in your calculator, you can do it. 5 times 5 times 5, and that gives you 125. So we know it is -125, and that was a minus sign. Okay, so our next step is multiplying. So we have 2 times -4, which gives us -8, and then subtract, and then we have -4 times -4, which gives us, or sorry, -4 times +1 gives us +4, and then it says negative and a negative make a positive, and then that's 125. All right, so now we have some back-to-back signs here. So a negative and a positive make a negative. So what this means is we have -8 subtract 4 plus 125. So let's use our calculator. So we'll get rid of that. Oh man, crap, sorry. -8 minus 4 plus 125. -8 minus 4 plus 125 gives us 113. That's better. Okay, so our final answer equals 113. Okay, just joking, not last questions. Next section, sorry. So if A equals -1/2 and B equals 5/3, we're going to evaluate this now. So it's the same thing we were doing, only now we're using fractions. And I know a lot of people don't like fractions, but just do it one step at a time and you'll be okay. All right, so we have 3 times, instead of A, we have to multiply it now by -1/2. Minus 2, and instead of B, we have to multiply by 5/3. Okay, so remember earlier we talked about if there's nothing underneath the whole number, it's a 1 underneath. Okay, so I'm just going to put those in just to help you. Okay, because when we're multiplying fractions, we multiply the numerators together and we multiply the denominators together. Okay, so it just kind of helps if you put a place value underneath. Okay, so the first one, 3 times -1 gives us -3. And then 1 times 2 gives us 2. And then over here, we can put subtract. And then we have 2 times 5, which gives us 10. And then 1 times 3 gives us 3. Now, we have to find a common denominator, because right now we are subtracting these two fractions. This has a 2, this has a 3. So what we need to do is multiply this fraction by 3, and then we're going to multiply this fraction by 2, so that our common denominator is 6. So I'm just going to add some brackets here, and we're going to times this one by 3, and then we're going to times this one by 2. Okay, so 3 times -3 gives me -9, and then 3 times 2 gives me 6. And then subtract, because there's a subtraction right there. 10 times 2 gives me 20, and then 2 times 3 gives me 6. So now we have the same common denominator, so we know that it's going to be over top of 6. And then now we just have to do -9, take away 20, and that's going to give us -29. Okay, so now we have to change this into an, this is an improper fraction, so now we have to change it into a mixed fraction. Okay, so we have to figure out how many times does 6 go into 30. Okay, so we know that 5 times 6 is 30. So that's bigger than 29. So instead of 5, it's going to be a 4. So it goes in 4 times. And then how you can figure it out, 6 times 4 is 24. And we need it to get to 29. So we can just do 29 minus 24, which gives us 5. So we know that it's 5, 6. And because it was a positive divided by a negative, we know that our whole fraction is negative. So we have our -4 and 5, 6. Okay? This one took up a lot of space. It's really hard writing with your finger, guys, so I'm trying my best to keep it small. Okay? So B, we have -1/2 times A, so I'm just going to write it like -1/2. And then A is replaced with this right here, -1/2. So -1/2. And then subtract another half. And then B is 5/3. Alright, so now we need to multiply the numerators together. -1 times -1 gives me 1. And 2 times 2 gives me 4. And then subtract 1 times 5 gives me 5. Oops. And 2 times 3 gives me 6. So now we need to have a common denominator. So we have 4 and 6. So 4 times 6 can give us 24. Or also 12 goes into both. 6 times 2 gives us 12. 4 times 3 gives us 12. So I'm going to put this, we're going to multiply this one by 2 and multiply this one by 3. Write it over here. So 1 times 3 gives me 3. 3 times 4 gives me 12. Subtract 5 times 2 gives me 10. 6 times 2 gives me 12. And last step, 3 minus 10 gives me -7/12. The end.